their big movies are probably gonna be like Fantastic Four. You know, there's a lot of characters that they could put in there. The other big brand that they really gotta put out is X-Men.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And those characters are, you know, like front lines for you know, drawing in the audience. So those are also a lot of stories and a lot of characters that they still have to introduce.
You're
Yep.
absolutely right, dude. Like that's one thing that is gonna make it or break it for me, because I feel like the Fantastic Four and the X-Men haven't been given the true justice they deserve as characters. From the comics, they're so awesome. Every single character. Cyclops is awesome.
Yeah.
If they make a Cyclops that's like a almost like a super soldier, but with his
Yeah, like a
abilities,
Captain
I was
America.
gonna say,
yeah, like that's what he is.
recently new Captain America figure.
Yeah, like if they do that with his ability to like be a true leader, like he'd be so badass by himself, you know. And then have Wolverine, you know, be built up as his own solo character, and then eventually he joins the X-Men, you know.
Yeah.
And then for Deadpool, like we all know who Deadpool is, just have him be Deadpool and come out in those movies, you know.
Yeah, there has to be no explanation for Deadpool because he's just gonna come in and we all understand what's happening.
Yeah, it would be cool though if they did something where maybe they just didn't talk about in the last two movies with him, that they show flashback that he was there, the Weapon X program, you know, because I know they kind of switch up the origin in his own movie, but and they show him with Wolverine, X Force, what X Force is supposed to be, you know.
Yeah. And you know, and this is the other thing, you know, you still have the whole Kang storyline. How does that fit into things? You have Scarlet Witch. We definitely didn't see the last of her. I find it very hard to believe that at the end of Multiverse of Madness, she took herself out. No, she's around, right? And there's so many storyline possibilities and things that they can do with her. Like they can even continue the House of M storyline. You can still follow that, you know. So we'll see where they go with it.
I just want to see stuff that we have never seen before. You know, I want to see characters that they continue to grow and make them more powerful. You know, like there's this one villain that it's like Magneto, but I think it's Xavier's son, and he's really
Legion. Are you talking about Legion?
Legion. Like I want to see them introduced. I want to see Mr. Fantastic dropped the line. I know it's a different universe, but he said he has kids already. So these are a Fantastic Four that's established. He has his family. He's married to Sue already.
Yeah.
So I would like to see their kids and then have them say like, hey, they're mutants, you know,
Yeah.
and that he's like an Omega level, and then them explain what an Omega level mutant is and kind of like build this levels of abilities that we get to see.
And this is the thing, man. They've been really setting up the mutants. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with Miss Marvel, and not to spoil anything, but there was a line in the show where the way she gets her power in the show is through this band that she gets, right? Her little friend who's a scientist, and he mad smart, he's like a genius. When he was doing some tests, he told her like, oh, the powers that you have aren't coming from the band just enhanced the powers that were already in you. Like your powers are coming from within you, right? Again, like how they did with Scarlet Witch, that screams mutant, right? Because with Scarlet Witch in WandaVision, she was a little girl, and Agatha had told her that, hey, you already had the powers of probability within you. That's how you stop that Stark bomb from exploding. So little by little, they've been setting up mutants. So if that's gonna be Phase 5, most likely that's probably what's gonna end up happening. But we gotta see what really leads up from Phase 4, Phase 5.
I wonder what their approach to the Phase 5 is gonna be, because I agree with Jonathan that these sagas are not gonna take 10 years to tell a story. How fast are they going to introduce new characters and movies and things? Like, for example, X-Men, they're not going to build it up the way they did Avengers with everybody having their own trilogy. But are they going to go as fast as they have with like the introduction of the Eternals, where it's just a one contained movie and you kind of just have a narrator say who these people are and where they've been, and 15 minutes in, it's been established and we're just rolling. You know,
yeah.
And
I mean,
how does the audience, I guess, does that work for everything and everybody? Like, does it give it less of sort of an oomph if it just goes that fast, as opposed to like a major character having a trilogy that tells like his beginning, middle, and not end, but a big story. So,
Like how they did with Spider-Man. They gave Spider-Man a 3-movie origin story.
yeah, yeah. But
So,
Spider-Man's a huge character. Like, he's top 5 no matter what age. You recognize him. I don't know though. Everybody might not deserve the same attention.
maybe with the X-Men, because if they do an X-Men movie, I don't want to see the later incarnations of the X-Men where you see Wolverine, Storm, Colossus. I want to see the original 5. Like, give me an X-Men movie where it's just Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Angel, and Beast. Just those 5, Xavier, and introduce the X-Men like that. Like you said, John, have Wolverine have his own movie. He can be on his own adventure. Do an actual Weapon X movie where you're introducing him separately, and you can do the same thing with Storm. Hey, give Storm her own movie where she's somewhere off in Africa and meets Black Panther in Wakanda. Whatever they want to do, they can do it with those really popular X-Men that can join the X-Men team later on. They can do solo movies. They can do a Gambit movie, right? Like, that'd be awesome. I know they were gonna do that Gambit movie with Channing Tatum. Like, hey, go back to that, see if that script works, and do build the future X-Men by doing individual movies. But like the first incarnation of the X-Men should be the original 5, because we haven't seen that. We have not seen that in the movies. We haven't seen it in years since the comics. Like, even in the cartoons, when by the time you watch the cartoons, the ones that came out in the 90s, it was already an established X-Men team. You don't really see the origins. And they try to do it with First Class, but First Class was kind of weak because it was like a bunch of random X-Men. Even Havoc, Cyclops' little brother, was in First Class, which is like, wait a minute, that's supposed to be Cyclops' younger brother, not his older brother. What is he doing joining the X-Men before Cyclops ever did? So that didn't work for me. So I hope they stay true to it, because I think the X-Men are as big. I mean, no one's as big as Spider-Man, right? But they're that big where they deserve to have their own origin story told like in the comic books. The MCU works so well because if you go back to Phase 1, you got origin stories that were almost identical to the comic books. Iron Man was straight out of the comic books. Yeah, they made changes to make it a little bit more modern, but it was still about a millionaire who ended up in the cave with a box of scraps and made an armor, right? Thor, same thing. His father banned him from Asgard and he was sent down to Earth. Captain America, we saw his story take place in World War II. He was frozen and he came back to the future. He came to the future. And that's why all those stories work, because they follow the source material. Do the same thing with X-Men. Do the same thing with Fantastic Four. So that was my little rant right there.
I think with Fantastic Four it could work. Them showing the beginning and having the comics, but with X-Men it's going to be a lot more difficult because you have each hero. They're different ages. From the X-Men, at least the X-Men I grew up with, Cyclops was like the adult leader figure. Then you had characters that were like barely 14, like 16, Jubilee, and Wolverine was this ancient person. Then you have Xavier that's been doing this for decades, and this is like his 3rd or 4th iteration of the team, and that's the team that we're following. So if they're gonna do something with the X-Men, it has to start with Xavier because it's his school, So for me, they would either have to do a multiverse thing that the X-Men exist and they've always existed. They have their own multiverse, their own universe. And then the Secret Wars is kind of like mashing everyone together, like all this, because then we would see the political battles, like No More Mutants. Like, remember, this took place way back in the day. If they followed the comics with Xavier and Magneto, so.
But that's where Wanda comes in, right? Like, Wanda could bring in the Age of the Mutants. She could still do that, and keep in mind that the original X-Men, and this is the thing, like, where you can really cater the X-Men to the young audience, is that the original X-Men were teenagers. Cyclops was a teenager, Jean Grey, they were all teenagers, right? It wasn't until years later that you had the addition of all these other characters
Me, I want Magneto to be Wanda's dad, just like in the
Yeah.
comics, and Quicksilver. And they need to bring Quicksilver back. Somehow,
Yep.
that character needs to come back. It's unfair that they killed him like that.
Yep.
Um, and then the same thing with Xavier. Like, yeah, if you make Cyclops, you can get away with making them younger characters, but then that means we're going to have a younger Xavier, which also means that the time is going to be well off.
That'll kind of do it for the MCU at this point. If you have any comments, leave your questions, drop a like, and subscribe if you want to stay up to date with our content.